True maturity begins with emotional mastery, not the absence of emotions, not becoming cold, distant, or indifferent, but learning that emotions are signals, not commands. Many people spend their lives reacting to every feeling that appears within them. Anger becomes harsh words, disappointment becomes bitterness, jealousy becomes insecurity, fear becomes hesitation. They live as prisoners of temporary emotions, allowing passing feelings to make decisions that shape years of their lives. But a mature woman understands something powerful. Emotions are real, but they are not always reliable guides. This is one of the most attractive qualities any person can develop, not because it creates mystery or control over others, but because it creates stability within oneself. In a world where people are often impulsive, reactive, and easily influenced, emotional balance becomes rare. And what is rare often leaves a lasting impression. Think about the people who have influenced you most in life. Often they are not the loudest individuals in the room. They are the people who remain calm when others panic. They listen before reacting. They understand before judging. They can face difficulty without losing themselves. This kind of strength is not created overnight. It is developed through awareness. Every emotion has a message. Anger may signal that a boundary has been crossed. Fear may point toward uncertainty. Sadness may reveal loss or disappointment. Excitement may inspire action. But emotions become dangerous when they immediately turn into behavior without reflection. Imagine receiving criticism. An immature response may be immediate defensiveness. The mind begins creating arguments, explanations, or attacks. But a mature person pauses. Is the criticism true? Is there something useful here? Is this worth responding to? That pause changes everything. A few seconds of reflection can prevent hours, days, or even years of regret. This is why emotional control is not suppression. Suppression means pretending emotions do not exist. It means hiding anger until it becomes resentment, ignoring sadness until it becomes exhaustion, or denying fear until it creates anxiety. Emotional mastery is different. It says, I recognize what I feel, but I will choose my response carefully. This creates freedom because the person who controls your emotions controls your behavior. If someone can make you angry with a few words, your peace depends on them. If someone's approval determines your self-worth, your confidence belongs to them. If criticism destroys your identity, you become dependent on constant praise. A mature woman gradually takes back that power. She learns that not every opinion deserves a response. Not every disagreement requires a battle. Not every disappointment means failure, and not every emotion needs immediate action. This does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming intentional. There is also wisdom in understanding that emotions are temporary. You may feel hurt today and think the feeling will last forever. You may feel embarrassed and believe everyone is judging you. You may feel rejected and assume you have lost something irreplaceable. But emotions often change with time, perspective, conversation, and experience. This is why patience is powerful. Do not make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. Pause, reflect, observe, then choose. Another sign of emotional maturity is accepting responsibility for your inner world. Many people spend years blaming others for every feeling they experience. This person made me angry. This situation ruined my happiness. This criticism destroyed my confidence. Other people can influence us, certainly. But emotional maturity asks another question. How do I respond? What can I control? What do I need to learn? This perspective does not deny pain. It creates agency, and agency creates confidence, because confidence is not believing that life will always be easy. Confidence is trusting that you can handle what life brings. A mature woman also understands that strength and kindness can exist together. Emotional control does not mean becoming cold. It means expressing emotions honestly without allowing them to become destructive. You can say, that hurt me, without becoming cruel. You can say, I disagree, without disrespect. You can establish boundaries without hostility. You can walk away from unhealthy situations without hatred. This balance is powerful because it protects both your peace and your dignity. And perhaps the greatest lesson is this: the way you manage your emotions shapes every area of life. It influences relationships, it affects decisions, it changes communication. It determines whether you react impulsively or respond thoughtfully. It affects how you handle success, failure, praise, criticism, love, disappointment, and uncertainty. Many people spend years trying to control external circumstances while ignoring the inner world that shapes their experience of everything. But true maturity begins within. It begins when you stop asking, how can I control everyone around me? And begin asking, How can I understand and guide myself more wisely? That question changes the direction of a life, because when you develop emotional mastery, you stop being pushed in every direction by passing feelings. You become calmer in difficulty, clearer in decisions, stronger in relationships, and more grounded in who you are. And in a world filled with reaction, calm self-control becomes a quiet form of strength that people naturally respect. Master your emotions, and you master the foundation upon which every other strength is built. A mature woman understands that self-respect is not something she announces. It is something she demonstrates through the choices she makes every day. She knows that having standards does not mean believing she is better than other people. It means understanding what matters to her, recognizing what kind of treatment is healthy, and refusing to repeatedly betray her own values simply because she is afraid of losing someone's approval. This distinction is important because many people confuse peace with acceptance. They think keeping everyone happy is the same as having a good relationship. They avoid difficult conversations, tolerate behavior that repeatedly hurts them, and say yes when they desperately want to say no. At first, this may seem like kindness, but eventually constantly abandoning your own needs creates resentment. Maturity begins when you realize that kindness without boundaries can become self-neglect. You can care about someone and still disagree with them. You can forgive someone without giving them unlimited access to your life. You can understand why someone behaves a certain way without accepting behavior that repeatedly violates your values. Compassion does not require you to surrender your judgment. This is where standards become powerful. A standard is not a demand that everyone behave perfectly. People make mistakes, they misunderstand things, they have difficult days, they sometimes say the wrong thing or make decisions they later regret. A mature person does not judge someone entirely by one imperfect moment. She looks at patterns. Does this person take responsibility when they make a mistake? Do they respect boundaries after those boundaries are communicated? Do they listen when something genuinely matters? Do their actions generally match their words? Do they make an effort to repair problems? Patterns reveal character more clearly than isolated moments, and the same principle must apply inwardly. If you expect honesty from other people, practice honesty yourself. If you want respect, give respect. If you want people to honor your boundaries, learn to honor theirs. Standards become credible when you live by them instead of simply demanding them from everyone around you. One of the most difficult lessons is learning to say no without feeling guilty. You don't need to say yes simply because someone might be disappointed. You don't need to accept every invitation. You don't need to take responsibility for every problem. You don't need to explain every personal decision in extraordinary detail. Sometimes a simple, respectful no is enough. I can't commit to that. That doesn't work for me. I'd rather not discuss that. I understand your perspective, but I see it differently. These statements are not acts of hostility. They are examples of clear communication. The fear of disappointing people can become a powerful trap. If your entire life is organized around avoiding other people's disappointment, then other people's emotions begin controlling your decisions. You may choose a career, friendship, relationship, or lifestyle because it makes someone else comfortable rather than because it reflects your own values. That is not freedom. A mature person learns that disappointment is sometimes unavoidable. Someone may disagree with your decision. Someone may misunderstand your boundary. Someone may prefer that you behave differently. You can still remain respectful. You do not have to turn disagreement into conflict. You can simply recognize that another person's preference does not automatically become your responsibility. This is where self-respect becomes visible. It appears when you leave conversations that have become consistently disrespectful instead of endlessly trying to win them. It appears when you stop participating in relationships where your boundaries are repeatedly ignored. It appears when you refuse to compromise important values just to receive temporary approval. It appears when you choose long-term peace over short-term acceptance. But standards should never become an excuse for arrogance. There is a difference between saying, "This behavior does not work for me," and saying, "People who behave this way are beneath me." The first is self-respect. The second is superiority. You do not need to insult people who live differently from you. You do not need to criticize everyone who disagrees with you. You do not need to prove that your choices are better. You simply need to know which choices are right for your own life. This creates a quieter form of confidence. You become less interested in convincing people and more interested in understanding yourself. You also become more careful about who receives your trust. Trust does not need to be given instantly. It can develop through consistent behavior. Watch what people do over time. Notice whether they respect privacy, keep commitments, acknowledge mistakes, and treat others fairly. You do not need to become suspicious of everyone. You simply need to become observant. And observation is different from judgment. You can notice a pattern without immediately creating a story about someone's entire character. This balance allows you to remain open while still protecting yourself. Ultimately, healthy standards create better relationships because they make honesty possible. When people know what you value and what you are comfortable with, there is less confusion. When you can communicate your limits calmly, you reduce the need for resentment and unnecessary conflict. The mature woman does not build walls around herself. She builds clarity within herself. She knows what she values, what she can give, what she cannot give, and what kind of behavior she will not repeatedly accept. That is not coldness, that is self-respect in action. And when you stop sacrificing your values simply to keep people pleased, you become more grounded, more confident, and more authentic in every relationship you choose to maintain. Independence is one of the clearest signs of maturity because it means you can build a meaningful life without making another person's attention the center of your identity. This does not mean becoming distant, refusing help, or pretending that you never need anyone. Human beings need connection. The deeper lesson is that connection should add to your life, not become the thing that gives your life its entire direction. A mature woman understands that she must have a life of her own. She has interests that exist beyond relationships. She has goals that do not depend on someone else's approval. She develops abilities because she wants to become capable, not simply because she wants to impress someone. She creates routines, friendships, experiences, and ambitions that continue to exist whether someone is watching or not. This creates a different kind of confidence. When your identity depends entirely on external attention, every change in attention feels like a personal crisis. If someone responds quickly, you feel important. If they become distant, you begin questioning yourself. If people praise you, you feel confident. If they criticize you, your confidence disappears. Your emotional state becomes controlled by other people's reactions. That is exhausting. Independence begins when you realize that your identity must be larger than the attention you receive. You can appreciate compliments without needing them. You can enjoy companionship without fearing solitude. You can love someone without abandoning your own goals. You can value someone's opinion without allowing it to become the final authority over your life. This is not emotional distance. It is emotional stability. Think about how different a relationship feels when two people choose each other rather than desperately needing each other to feel complete. Each person has their own interests, responsibilities, friendships, and direction. They can support each other without becoming responsible for each other's entire happiness. That creates healthier connection. Independence also means learning to make decisions for yourself. There will always be people willing to tell you what you should do. Family members may have expectations, friends may have opinions, society may present certain ideas about what success should look like. Listen, consider, but think for yourself. A mature person does not automatically reject advice simply to appear independent. That is another form of insecurity. True independence means being capable of hearing different opinions and then deciding based on your own judgment. You can say, I understand why you think that, but I have chosen a different direction. You don't need to become defensive. You don't need to prove that everyone else is wrong. You simply need enough confidence to make your own decisions and accept responsibility for them. That responsibility is essential. Independence is not freedom from consequences. It is the willingness to accept consequences for your choices. If you choose a goal, you must accept the work required to achieve it. If you make a mistake, you must learn from it. If you spend your time poorly, you must recognize the cost. If you choose the wrong environment, you must be willing to change it. This creates maturity because you stop waiting for someone else to rescue you from every difficult decision. Develop practical independence as well. Learn how to manage your time. Learn how to organize your responsibilities, develop useful skills, become comfortable solving ordinary problems yourself. As you grow older, learn financial responsibility and understand how to make thoughtful decisions about your future. These things may not look glamorous, but they create stability, and stability creates confidence. You no longer need to perform strength because you are gradually becoming capable in real life. There is also a psychological advantage to having your own interests. When your life contains meaningful activities, you become less likely to obsess over one person or one relationship. You have somewhere else to place your attention. You can read, dedicate, learn, exercise for health, spend time with friends, work toward a goal. Explore a subject that interests you. develop a creative ability, build something meaningful. The point is not to stay constantly busy so you never have to think about your emotions. The point is to create a life rich enough that one person's attention does not determine the value of your entire day. Solitude can become especially valuable here. Being alone does not have to mean being lonely. Sometimes solitude gives you the opportunity to discover what you actually think when nobody else is influencing you. You begin noticing which goals are genuinely yours and which ones were adopted simply because they were expected of you. You can ask yourself difficult questions. What do I actually want? What kind of person am I becoming? Which values matter to me? What am I willing to work for? What should I stop tolerating? What skills do I want to develop? These questions create self-knowledge, and self-knowledge makes independence stronger. A mature woman also understands that asking for help does not make her weak. Independence is not refusing support. It is knowing that support is a resource rather than a substitute for personal responsibility. You can ask a trusted person for advice. You can accept assistance. You can admit that you don't know something, but you remain responsible for your choices. That balance is important. You don't need to prove that you can do everything alone. You need to know that you can stand on your own when necessary. This is what makes independence so powerful. It changes the reason behind your relationships. You stop searching for someone to complete your identity and start looking for people who genuinely complement the life you are already building. You stop asking, who will make me feel valuable? You begin asking, who adds something healthy and meaningful to the life I am creating? That shift changes everything. Build a life you enjoy inhabiting, and connection becomes a choice rather than a desperate need. Communication reveals maturity long before appearance does. The way you speak, listen, disagree, respond to criticism, and handle silence tells people far more about your character than any carefully constructed image ever could. A mature woman understands that she does not need to dominate every conversation, explain every decision, or respond to every provocation. She has learned something many people spend years discovering. Not every thought deserves to be spoken, not every disagreement deserves an argument, and not every person deserves access to her emotional energy. There is strength in choosing your words carefully. When someone reacts instantly to everything, they become predictable. A small criticism produces defensiveness, a disagreement produces an argument, a misunderstanding produces a long explanation, a rude comment produces an immediate response. Their emotions become visible before their judgment has time to catch up, but when you pause, you create space between the event and your response. That space is where maturity develops. Before speaking, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is it true? Will saying it improve the situation? Am I responding because I genuinely have something useful to contribute or because I want to prove myself? These questions can prevent countless unnecessary conflicts. Silence, when chosen intentionally, can sometimes communicate more than a long explanation. This does not mean using silence to punish people or manipulate them. It means recognizing that you do not need to defend yourself against every opinion. Someone misunderstands you. You can clarify. Someone disagrees with you. You can listen. Someone criticizes you. You can evaluate the criticism. Someone insults you. You can decide whether responding has any meaningful purpose. Your maturity becomes visible in that choice. Listening is equally important. Many people listen only while preparing their own response. They are waiting for an opening to tell their story, correct someone, or demonstrate that they are right. True listening requires something different. Pay attention to what the person is actually saying. Notice the emotion behind their words. Ask yourself what they might be trying to communicate. You don't have to agree with everything you hear. Listening is not surrender. It is information. When you listen carefully, you understand people better. You begin noticing patterns in how they communicate, what they value, what they fear, and what they repeatedly emphasize. This improves your judgment because you are responding to reality rather than assumptions. It also makes conversations more meaningful. People remember those who make them feel heard. But there is another side to communication, knowing when to speak directly. Being mature does not mean becoming so quiet that you never express your needs. Avoiding every difficult conversation is not emotional intelligence. Sometimes honesty is necessary. If something bothers you, communicate it clearly instead of attacking someone with statements like, "You always do this," describe the actual issue. "I felt uncomfortable when that happened. I need clearer communication. I don't agree with that. I would prefer that we handle this differently." Clear language reduces unnecessary hostility because you are addressing the situation rather than attacking someone's identity. This is especially important when setting boundaries. A boundary does not need to sound threatening. You don't need to raise your voice to make yourself understood. Calm words can carry tremendous weight. The mature woman does not need to make every conversation dramatic to prove that she has standards. She communicates what she means and then watches what happens next. If someone respects the boundary, the relationship can continue with greater clarity. If someone repeatedly ignores it, the behavior provides information. You don't always need another speech. Sometimes someone's repeated actions are already the answer. Another powerful habit is learning not to overshare. Not every person needs to know every detail about your life, your plans, your struggles, or your private relationships. Privacy is not deception, it is discretion. There is a difference between hiding yourself and choosing what deserves to remain personal. When you reveal everything immediately, you may later regret giving information to people who had not earned that level of trust. A mature person allows trust to develop gradually. This also protects your peace. You don't need to announce every goal before you've worked toward it. You don't need to explain every personal decision. You don't need to respond to every rumor. You don't need to prove your character to people committed to misunderstanding you. Let your behavior provide evidence. And when conflict happens, learn to separate the issue from your ego. The goal of a disagreement should not always be victory. Sometimes the goal is understanding, sometimes it is finding a solution, sometimes it is recognizing that two people simply see things differently. You can disagree without becoming enemies. You can correct someone without humiliating them. You can apologize without feeling weak. You can admit that you were wrong without losing your dignity. In fact, the ability to say, "I was wrong," can make communication stronger because it demonstrates that your ego is not more important than the truth. The same applies to compliments. A mature woman can receive praise without becoming dependent on it. She can say thank you without needing 10 more compliments to feel secure. Her identity does not rise and fall with every sentence someone says. That is emotional independence expressed through communication. And perhaps the most powerful habit is knowing when conversation has reached its natural end. Some arguments continue only because neither person wants to stop. The mature choice may be to say, "We don't seem to agree, and that's okay," and move forward. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every person deserves an explanation. Not every opinion deserves a response. Your words become more powerful when they are intentional rather than constant. Speak when your words can create clarity. Listen when understanding is needed. Stay silent when responding would only create more noise. Let your communication reveal calmness, intelligence, and self-respect. And let your actions finish what your words begin. Kindness is powerful, but kindness without self-respect can slowly become self-abandonment. A mature woman understands that being compassionate does not mean becoming responsible for everyone else's emotions, problems, or happiness. She can care deeply about people while still protecting her own time, energy, values, and boundaries. This is one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity because it allows generosity to come from choice rather than fear. Many people are taught directly or indirectly that being a good person means always being available. They learn to say yes when they want to say no. They apologize even when they have done nothing wrong. They tolerate behavior that makes them uncomfortable because they fear appearing difficult. They constantly adjust themselves to keep everyone around them happy. Eventually, they become exhausted, and then something even more damaging happens. Resentment begins replacing kindness. When you repeatedly give because you are afraid of rejection, your generosity stops being completely voluntary. You are no longer helping because you genuinely want to help. You are helping because you are afraid of what will happen if you don't. A mature woman learns to recognize that difference. She asks herself, am I doing this because I want to or because I am afraid to disappoint someone? That question can reveal a great deal. Healthy kindness leaves you feeling that you acted according to your values. Fear-driven people-pleasing often leaves you feeling drained, frustrated, or invisible. There is nothing wrong with helping someone. In fact, compassion is one of the most meaningful qualities a person can develop. But compassion should include wisdom. You can listen to someone's problem without taking responsibility for solving their entire life. You can support a friend without becoming available every hour of the day. You can forgive someone without allowing the same harmful behavior to continue indefinitely. You can understand someone's struggles without accepting repeated disrespect. This is where boundaries become part of kindness. A boundary is not punishment. It is not revenge. It is not an attempt to control another person. It is simply a clear understanding of what you are willing to participate in. You can say, I care about you, but I can't do that. You can say, I understand that you're upset, but I won't continue this conversation while we're insulting each other. You can say, I need some time for myself. You can say, I'm not comfortable with that. These statements do not make you cruel. They make your communication honest. The mature woman also understands that saying no does not automatically make her selfish. People are allowed to have different needs. Someone may want your time while you have another responsibility. Someone may want an answer immediately while you need time to think. Someone may expect you to solve a problem that is ultimately theirs to handle. Their expectation does not automatically become your obligation. This is a difficult lesson because guilt can appear whenever you establish a boundary. You may wonder whether you are being too harsh. You may worry that someone will become disappointed. You may even feel responsible for their emotional reaction. But another person's disappointment is not always evidence that you have done something wrong. Sometimes people are disappointed simply because they did not get what they wanted. You can acknowledge their feelings without surrendering your decision. I understand that you're disappointed. That sentence can coexist with, but my decision remains the same. This is emotional maturity. You do not need to become aggressive to remain firm. You do not need to become cold to protect yourself. You do not need to stop caring. You simply stop abandoning yourself. There is also a difference between generosity and self-sacrifice. Healthy generosity has limits because you have limits. Your time is limited. Your energy is limited. Your attention is limited. If you give everything away, eventually there is nothing left for your own responsibilities. And your own life deserves care too. Your goals matter. Your rest matters. Your learning matters. Your friendships matter. Your personal development matters. Your future matters. Taking care of yourself is not automatically selfish. It can actually make your generosity more sustainable because you are no longer constantly operating from exhaustion. Another powerful aspect of mature kindness is refusing to keep score. If you help someone genuinely, do not secretly expect them to repay you in exactly the way you imagined. Give because you have chosen to give. But this does not mean remaining in one-sided relationships forever. You can be generous without being naive. Pay attention to patterns. Does the other person appreciate your effort? Do they respect your boundaries? Are they there when you need support? Do they only contact you when they want something? Do they become angry whenever you say no? These patterns provide useful information. You don't need to label someone as terrible simply because the relationship is unbalanced. Sometimes people have different capacities. Sometimes circumstances change. But if the pattern consistently leaves you feeling used or disrespected, you are allowed to reconsider how much access you give that relationship. This is where kindness and self-respect meet. You can wish someone well without remaining close to them. You can forgive without forgetting what you learned. You can step away without creating hatred. You can protect your peace without needing revenge. And perhaps the most important lesson is that mature kindness begins with how you treat yourself. If you constantly speak to yourself with cruelty, ignore your own needs, and demand perfection from yourself, it becomes difficult to create genuinely healthy relationships with others. Give yourself the same basic compassion you offer people you care about. When you make a mistake, learn instead of destroying yourself with criticism. When you are tired, recognize that rest is part of functioning. When you need help, allow yourself to ask for it. When something is genuinely beyond your control, accept that reality instead of blaming yourself endlessly. Self-compassion is not weakness. It gives you the stability to keep growing. The strongest form of kindness is not giving everything you have to everyone who asks. It is having enough self-respect to give freely when you choose, enough wisdom to recognize when help is appropriate, and enough courage to say no when giving would require you to betray yourself. Be generous, but never make self-abandonment the price of being a good person. There is a kind of attractiveness that has very little to do with appearance and everything to do with depth. It is the presence of someone who has developed a rich inner world, who can think beyond the obvious, who continues learning even when nobody is watching, and who does not need constant attention to feel that her life has meaning. This kind of presence cannot be manufactured overnight because it comes from years of curiosity, discipline, reflection, and personal growth. A mature woman understands that appearance may create an impression, but character creates the lasting one. She does not build her entire identity around how others perceive her. She asks deeper questions. What do I believe? What am I learning? What kind of person am I becoming? What experiences have shaped me? What principles do I want to live by? What abilities do I want to develop? These questions create substance. Without substance, a person can become overly dependent on attention. They constantly need something external to make them feel interesting, important, or worthy. They may change their opinions depending on the people around them. They may imitate whatever is popular because they are uncertain about what they actually value. But someone with inner depth does not need to constantly perform. She can enter a conversation without needing to dominate it. She can disagree without becoming defensive. She can admit that she doesn't know something and remain curious enough to learn. That humility is powerful. One of the simplest ways to develop inner depth is to remain curious. Curiosity keeps the mind alive. Instead of assuming you already understand everything, ask better questions. Why do people behave this way? Why do I react this way? What can I learn from this experience? What makes this subject interesting? What perspective am I missing? Curiosity turns ordinary experiences into opportunities for growth. Ride something unfamiliar, learn a new skill, explore history, psychology, science, art, literature, business, philosophy, or any subject that genuinely interests you. You do not need to become an expert in everything. The goal is to expand your understanding of the world. The more you learn, the more connections you begin to see. You understand that people are complicated. You realize that first impressions can be misleading. You discover that confidence does not always look loud. You recognize that success can have many different definitions, and you become less likely to judge everything through a single narrow perspective. This intellectual flexibility creates maturity, but inner depth is not only about knowledge, it is also about experience and reflection. Two people can experience the same difficult event and respond completely differently. One becomes bitter and spends years blaming others. The other asks, what can I learn from this? Reflection turns experience into wisdom. Without reflection, experiences simply happen. With reflection, they teach you. Take time to examine your decisions, not with endless self-criticism, but with honesty. What worked, what didn't? Where did you ignore your instincts? Where did you communicate poorly? Where did you allow fear to make the decision? What would you do differently next time? These questions create self-awareness, and self-awareness is one of the strongest foundations of maturity because you cannot improve something you refuse to see. Inner depth also comes from developing personal goals that require patience. When everything in life is focused on immediate gratification, your attention becomes dependent on quick rewards, but meaningful growth often takes time. Learning an instrument takes time. Developing a career takes time. Building trustworthy relationships takes time. Becoming emotionally mature takes time. Creating something meaningful takes time. Patience teaches you to continue even when the results are not immediately visible. This is another reason discipline matters. Motivation comes and goes. Curiosity can fluctuate. Some days you will feel inspired and other days you will not. Maturity means continuing to invest in yourself anyway, not perfectly, not obsessively, consistently. Small actions accumulate. A few pages read every day can eventually become deep knowledge. Regular practice can become competence. Thoughtful conversations can improve communication. Reflection can gradually change the way you make decisions. Your inner world is built through these small investments. There is also beauty in having interests that are not designed to impress anyone. Learn something because you genuinely enjoy learning it. Create something because creating gives you satisfaction. Explore a subject because you are curious. When everything you do is performed for an audience, you can lose touch with yourself. A mature person has parts of her life that do not require an audience. She can enjoy a quiet afternoon. She can work toward a goal privately. She can learn without announcing it. She can improve without constantly comparing herself with others. That private development creates confidence because she knows her growth is real. And when she enters a room, she does not need to demand attention. Her presence comes from being comfortable with herself. This connects every habit that came before. Emotional control gives her stability. Standards give her self-respect. Independence gives her direction. Intentional communication gives her clarity. Healthy kindness gives her compassion without self-abandonment. Inner depth gives all of these qualities substance. None of this requires perfection. Maturity is not becoming someone who never makes mistakes. It is becoming someone who learns from mistakes instead of allowing them to define her. You will still have difficult emotions. You will sometimes make poor decisions. You will misunderstand people. You will experience disappointment. You will occasionally lose confidence. The difference is that you keep returning to yourself. You keep learning You keep adjusting, you keep becoming more aware of who you are and who you want to become. That is the deeper form of attractiveness, not perfection, not constant attention, not trying to fit someone else's ideal, but substance. A person who has built a meaningful inner world becomes interesting because she has something to contribute to the world around her. She can listen deeply, think independently, communicate thoughtfully, and continue growing throughout life. And when nobody is watching, she is still becoming someone she can respect. Build the kind of inner world that makes your presence meaningful long after the first impression has disappeared.